preseason effectively wrapped up. We've got a couple games left. The Titans-Saints going on right now. You've got Cardinals, Broncos. You've got Patriots, Commanders. Should be very interesting. A lot of intrigue this preseason. What do we make of it in terms of dynasty values, in terms of quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, the whole 9 yards? We're going to spend about an hour or so analyzing, projecting. Do we buy into the hype? Do we tail it? Do we fade it? What do we do? So try to provide some clarity with that. And as always, guys, if you appreciate the content, feel a little frisky, drop a like, sub. If you want to be in a listener league, a dynasty league, leave a comment with your sleeper username, and let's get freaky like that. So, starting off, I want to benchmark, the community ranking platforms. I want to benchmark specifically where players are ranked at this current moment. I'm going to benchmark that and just forecast if I think they're going to go up, down, stagnate in between, what I think is reasonable with these respective players. So we start off with quarterback. Of course, you've got your Mahomes, your Allens, your Strouds, Lamar, Hurts, and then here we go, Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams there as of course, first round startup caliber player, super flex as always, of course. QB6. This is where I've roughly had him ranked dating back months ago. We knew he was going to be number 1 overall pick, and he's shown flashes, to say the least, this preseason. And honestly, he's, I think, elevated my expectations, only up the ante on the anticipation for me to see how he does in year 1. Do I think he has a Stroud-esque year? Very possible. Very possible. I think you look at the weapons already there. You look at the underlying skill set, which we've seen those Mahomes comparisons already. It's possible. Do I think it's probable? Maybe not quite. But nonetheless, I look at Caleb Williams in and around this QB6, top 5 quarterback conversation. I don't see that changing anytime soon. We see clearly the special player that he is. We go a little bit down, Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson heading into year 2. And there's going to be several year 2 players, several year 2 quarterbacks that we're going to key in on here today. He's QB9 right there with Jaden Daniels rounding out that top 10. I think that's fair. I think we, of course, understand the game-breaking talent, the fantasy talent that Anthony Richardson poses. Any given week, he could be a game winner. He could be a game winner. And I know for all the Kurt Benkert, no disrespect, I'm out based on some plays in a preseason game. On the same token, you've got QB school, JT O'Sullivan, shout out there, flipping up, wow, this is special stuff on the touchdown jump throw that he had to A.D. Mitchell. What do we make of it? I think more or less this QB9 valuation is where he's going to roughly end up for the majority of the season. I think there's going to be some ups and downs. But if there's some immediate ups, you're going to see, honestly, I see jumping up a couple spots into the Caleb range. And frankly, you see the 16th overall player. I mean, I see him consistently in this top 12 in the first round, which I think is fair. We just know there's going to be some lumps, but there's going to be unbelievable fantasy production, I think. Anthony Richardson, not looking to sell him anytime soon. I don't think you can really buy him, though. You check the pulse of your league, of course. In my experience, I don't think anybody is selling low at the moment, to say the least. Nor should they, I guess, to be clear. Jaden Daniels, right behind him. Jaden Daniels, clearly the QB1 in Washington. They made that clear a long time ago. He's shown flashes for sure. Largely optimistic, which I think he should be, given he's effectively, in terms of the pure rushing ability, this year's diet Anthony Richardson. He's not as big, obviously. But there in Washington, no more Jahan Dotson. You've got Terry McLaurin, though. You've got Ben Sinnott there. You've got some pretty decent running backs. You've already got Cliff Kingsbury talking up Brian Robinson quite a bit. And then you got Eckler, who, of course, we know he can be a receiving threat, not in his prime anymore, but can absolutely provide you something there as a pass-catching weapon for Jaden Daniels. It's going to be interesting. He does play in the same division as your Eagles, as your Cowboys. So it's not going to come easy. But similar to Anthony Richardson, you see the rushing ability. You saw the Heisman season in college. I mean, the dude has wheels. He can move. And that's going to only work to, I think, offset maybe some growing pains elsewhere. And it provides basically a security blanket from a dynasty perception, projection argument. He's not going anywhere anytime soon, I don't think. Unless he looks just completely out of it, which I don't think's been any indicator up to this point. Jaden Daniels, I think you got to like what you've seen so far, what you're hearing. We'll see. Ahead of your Kyler Murray's, your Justin Herbert's, there's big expectations. I don't think they're completely unfounded. You go down into our next crop of players in terms of quarterback. What I really am interested, what I'm intrigued in talking about, it's your QB 17 through 22, 23 range of things. On Keep Trade Cut, it starts with Drake May. It ends with Will Levis. Let's just go over to Flock. Shout out to Flock. Look at their community rankings there. It effectively is QB 18 to QB 22, give or take, is that range. Some rookies and some year two players at quarterback. And I think in terms of where they're seen in the overall picture of Dynasty rankings, there is a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity here. I'm looking at Drake May. Let's talk about him in particular. You know, if you're familiar with the channel, I am a big Drake May believer. I've been saying he's a 102 caliber player in your rookie drafts for months now. And yes, it's New England. Yes, there's the stench around the franchise, around the struggles, around, well, you just saw the recency of Mac Jones as this. I don't know what's going on with my screen there. See what happens with Mac Jones. You see, even in that division, what happened with Zach Wilson. And I think that plays into the Patriots' rationale in terms of what's just been reported over the last couple of weeks. You don't want to just throw him into the fire right away, per se. But at the same time, you know he's going to play football early. And I think you go back to the preseason schedule. That's the NFL schedule. You've got Patriots, Commanders, tonight at 8, Drake May. I think there's a lot of opportunity. For Drake May to really continue what he's already shown. Those flashes, and that's all really that you can realistically hope to see in preseason are flashes. Because no one's really playing full games, right? And of course, the competition generally, it's just not what it's going to be in the regular season. But you just keep the pace, you keep the momentum. You've got now a little bit of a change in tune with the Patriots coaching, the messaging, the narrative really being, oh, the quarterback competition still undecided. Yes, they keep saying Jacoby Brissett. He is currently the leader in the clubhouse, QB1, at least to start week 1. And I think that's going to be the case. I really do. I think Jacoby Brissett is going to start week 1. And then if we get that announcement, I think you're only going to see sort of unjust. God, what is going on with that screen? You're only going to see largely unjustified potential free fall from this QB 19. Maybe he goes below into the even QB 20 plus as an immediate reaction, which I think, again, it's just not sensible. And it's just more and more opportunistic for you to jump in, potentially buy low with Drake May. Let's say he shows flashes, but he also shows a pick this in a couple hours tonight at 8. Oh no, look at the bad, or the bad overshadows the good. Drake May, for me, this suppression of his ranking, lowering of expectations, it only makes it so that we get into week 2, which I think week 2, week 3, maybe as late as week 4, but I really think it's going to be before week 4 if I had to do an over-under. Let me know if you guys agree with that in the chat when Drake May starts for the Patriots in the regular season. He doesn't have to do insane things to then all of a sudden climb up from where he would be suppressed in terms of the quarterback evaluation, the quarterback market currently, or in the next couple days or so, to be clear. You see the athleticism, you see the rushing upside. The rushing upside, similar to that of a Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, is his early year. Drake May, I just time and time again, yes, look, there's the bias. You can say I've just been a fan since, prospecting since his UNC days. But there's just so much opportunity with Drake May here in and around the QB 20 range, firmly outside the quarterback 15 range. I think if there's anybody who's firmly outside of this top 15 quarterback landscape right now in Dynasty, Drake May's the guy. Drake May is the guy that can comfortably, I think, sneak into that and then some. With just semi-promising signs, production, plays here and there, his rookie year. I really, really am of that belief. Going down, we've got, I guess, technically going up a little bit. You've got Bo Nix. You got Bo Nix here, who he is certainly risen up the charts slightly. Not even slightly. We're talking a guy that's now firmly in and around this top 20 quarterback range. A guy that was outside of really QB2 range in the top 24 of quarterback rankings. He's certainly shown enough to be the starter there in Denver. Already been cleared up, announced. There's no real mystery about that anymore. With Bo Nix in Denver, the receiving weapons, sure, they're not the sexiest, they're not the greatest, but he's shown an ability to be look, a couple rankings down here, Brock Purdy, to be honestly that archetype of a potential game manager, just to keep the ball, no slight, to keep the ball moving, to churn out an output that all of a sudden the guy's got consistently 15 plus fantasy points for you. And for a rookie in a dynasty sense, it's definitely a good value. And shout out to, Shane says on Twitter, Shane over there, Trades in 5, saw a tweet alluding to the fact, I wish I had drafted Bo Nix, not because necessarily even of, to be clear, I don't totally agree with the tweet, but just this idea, wish you had drafted the quarterback, in this case, Bo Nix, in your late 1, early 2 range when you were on the clock. You had the opportunity, just because of the potential to really even recoup you surplus value, a potential first, roll the dice in future years, maybe an additional pick even on top, just for that trajectory, that upside, that ability to even, quote unquote, just to re-roll. But I think there's more promise than to just re-roll then and just sell right now. If you want, okay. But I'm very interested in Bo Nix and what he can potentially do for that Denver Broncos team that could be, I think, a sneaky team where he gets one or two game-winning drives, let's say, in that mid-year. And all of a sudden, you're hearing the praises of Bo Nix in a real-life NFL quarterback sense. And that's only going to cloud and enter the judgment of us as fantasy players. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. It's a tangible game, right? It's a tangible game of yards, touchdowns, interception, in terms of the scoring output. But wins, team success certainly doesn't hurt. It certainly doesn't hurt. So with Bo Nix, certainly has shown some early returns. And I don't think all of a sudden it's time to just get out, get a slight win or two right now. I don't really see why you should do that when you could just ride the wave a little bit longer and longer and longer. JJ McCarthy, the injury sucks. It really does. He even showed some big plays in preseason. Yes, a couple picks to also throw in there. JJ McCarthy, though, we got to be mindful of the rushing upside he poses. And the situation there in Minnesota, I think if you can certainly maybe buy low right now, throw a future first, just gauge the market. I would absolutely want to be interested in gauging the market there with JJ McCarthy because there's no guarantee, especially with 2025 in that class. You've got your Carson Becks of the world. You've got your Shadur Sanders. I'm not totally sold on that top end of that class. And you certainly, hey, Dad Bod, what's up, man? I sent you a invite on Sleeper. I'm not sure if you've seen that yet, but to the listener league there. What's good, man? So talking about, we got MA football guy. We got a Patriots fan here. Patriots. What are we talking about? The profile picture. I'm just having a brain beyond a fart there, but we got a Patriots profile picture. I just talked about Drake May. Talking up Drake May. I know we've even talked about that, Bod. We've talked about me and you on previous live streams in the comment sections. We've talked about Drake May. I think you certainly, I'm curious from your perspective. You've got to like what you see, what you have seen. I think in a fantasy sense, Drake May, again, he's going to be, he's effectively one of my best buy lows that you can find in Dynasty fantasy football. One of the best buy lows. We'll see. Oh, that's a little misclick there with Jared Goff. I'm sure you're going to be tuned in tonight, Dabbot, 8 o'clock. Really interested to see how the true end of the NFL preseason there. Because if Drake May goes out there, just keeps the momentum again, I think there's a path to potentially getting a firm grasp. Maybe he ends up getting named the week 1 starter. I don't really expect that, to be clear. I think their Patriots are shortest and not completely unjustifiably so, sheltering him because of recent history. Got to see him in the preseason a week ago. Yeah, he looked. Yeah, he's showing. He has clearly demonstrated the athleticism, the ability, the arm talent. When it's third down on the money down, fired in there, and then on a bit of a zone read option when yards are at a premium, when it's congested in tight there and the goal to go. I really, really, really like Drake May. I cannot emphasize it enough. QB 19 price in Dynasty. Come on. What are we doing? Pivoting back real quick. talking about JJ McCarthy, another one of the rookies. I'm interested in potentially buying low. Talked about Bo Nix, talked about Drake. I want to scroll down here to Mr. Will Levis and Bryce Young. Really the focal points. Rounding out this quarterback conversation in Dynasty. Both these guys. Let's go back. Actually, game that's still going on, the Titans, Saints. And box score watching this or that. I'm just pointing out what Will Levis just did today. I'm just pointing it out there. 7 for 8, 118. With a new coaching staff. With a very favorable coaching staff that I might add that I really love. Getting a Brian Callahan there. We see what he's done in Cincinnati. Really not too dissimilar of a boat with Bryce Young. With the Dave Canales coming in. Both guys that outside of your top 20 quarterbacks, why not take a swing? And where they're being ranked, see the... let me scroll up a little. I guess it's blocked a little bit. Let me move this for a second here. 77, 74. Talk about 12-team league. So let's ballpark it in your 6th, 7th, 8th rounds of startup drafts. Why not? Why not? Why not? You're searching for upside. That's the name of the game. You're searching for upside. Didn't want the guy in the draft. Now, yeah. Isn't that funny how that works? Got that about talking about how you don't want a player in the draft. Talking about effectively the timeline of you go back about 4 months or so. You don't want somebody in the draft. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I completely underrated, overlooked the guy. And that headspace, that really gets at, sums up what the offseason into this preseason, the power that it can do in shaping narratives, reconstructing or really deconstructing views on a specific player, and then potentially, on the flip side, just strengthening, emboldening a view on a specific player. Good or bad, look, that'll remain to be seen for the most part. But you can't discount, again, there is an inherent perceived value that impacts players and how they're ranked and how they're viewed. Of course, it's a scoring-based game. But the water, that the perception, to varying degrees for players, obviously, especially the younger players, the largely unproven players. Is it hopium? Maybe. But is it just playing upside? Is it buying low? I tend to be more in that camp. I really do. With especially quarterbacks and superflex leagues. Hey, what's up? New to the channel. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, trades. Look, you guys, if anyone hopping in the stream, you got Dynasty trades in general. Let's talk that. A specific player you want to talk about? Let's talk that in the comments. I'm always responding. We got Jamar Chase, Zamir White for Gibbs, Flowers, and Dowdle. Okay. So I'm going to throw out Dowdle in the sake of this trade. Some of the big dogs at play here. Let's just subtract Dowdle for the sake of it. Chase and Zamir White for Gibbs and Flowers. Let me know. Let's get some format. Let's just get some format. I just want to be hyper aware of the context, as always. But on the surface, let's say it's Superflex or even non-Superflex. And I guess it doesn't matter. We're talking about running backs and wide receivers. So Chase, Zamir White, Gibbs, and Flowers. Okay. Gotcha, Dabbot. Okay. Glad it just went to the right person. I thought maybe it didn't. So, okay. PPR. Okay, 1 QB. 1 QB. Gotcha. So Chase to Gibbs, it's not that far off between those two players. I think Chase still give the tiebreaker to him. I think, look, I'm seeing people a little bit of panic. I know the contract situation. What's exactly going to happen? It's still Jamar Chase. It's still a guy who's connected to Joe Burrow, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't see this crazy risk of a holdout. I just don't see how that can happen. If you're just in terms of organizationally, all the way up to Mike Brown, I believe, the owner, GM, that leadership, there's no way they let Jamar Chase hold out. I just don't see that happening. So, and in a PPR league, look, Gibbs, of course, he's got that incredible receiving upside as well. Flowers to Zamir White. So it's really Zamir White to Zay Flowers. I'm pretty bullish on what Zamir White can be this year. I really like that upside. Man, this is a tough trade. This is a tough trade for me. Chase to Gibbs. The question is, does Zay Flowers completely head and shoulders go above Zamir White and effectively negate the gap of Chase to Gibbs? Man, okay, this is tough, man. This is tough, but as much as I like Zamir White, Jahmyr Gibbs, look, he is in that tier 1 of running back. Zay Flowers, there's a lot of upside there. Oh my god, dude. This is a good trade. This is a great trade to bring up. I am going I'm going Gibbs Flowers. I'm going Gibbs and Flowers here. I'm going Gibbs and Flowers. I look at Zay Flowers. Yes, he's with the Ravens. Yes, we know their identity. Obviously, with Derrick Henry coming in, you know they're going to run the ball. You know what Lamar Jackson provides in that rushing attack there. But as a passer, I think Zay Flowers can be absolutely supported. Had some promising year 1. A little bit of a unfortunate end in some of the playoffs, to be clear. Some unfortunate for Zay Flowers. I really look at the upside. Zay Flowers, he's in that wide receiver 2 in Dynasty conversation. So basically, RB1, firm RB1, tier 1 RB1, plus a wide receiver 2, plus a flyer on Rico Dowdle. I know I scratched him, so let's still scratch him for the sake of this, but tier 1 receiver, more of a RB2, mid-low and RB2 in Dynasty, Zamir White. I just got to go Gibbs and Flowers here. You're saying tough because, yeah, you think Gibbs Flowers. Okay, you think Gibbs and Flowers wins, or am I just because White doesn't have the receiving upside? That's a good point. Bringing up the receiving upside with Zamir White, he did have some limited. It was limited compared to the just sheer amount of rushes. He got a couple. I actually want to pull that up. Let's look at Zamir White. Let's pull up Zamir White real quick. Because if my memory serves me correctly, he did get some involvement. And keep it in mind too, once Antonio Pierce took over. So yeah, you look at when it really became the Zamir White show. Okay, and you're a Raiders fan. You love him, but yeah, you think you're getting the better deal. So you're getting the Gibbs, you're getting the Gibbs and Flowers side. I totally support that reasoning. So over the final 4 weeks of the season, you got a 4-1-6-2 in terms of the sheer amount of targets. No more Hunter Renfrow. I'm curious, as a Raiders fan, how do you see the receiver hierarchy playing out? Of course, there was no Brock Bowers, so I think he's going to be an incredible, incredible piece of the pie there. All right, you just joined the league. Dope, dope. Okay. So there's some receiving upside, with Zamir White, but we just go back. We think about the fragility of running back in general, and it's not like he's in year 1 or year 2. Zamir White, that is. You look at a guy like a Jahmyr Gibbs. Look, he's not going to come around on the block every day, nor is, of course, Jamar Chase. So it's obviously tough to part with a player like him. But I do give the tiebreaker Zay Flowers over Zamir White, making up for the slight gap between a Chase and a Gibbs. So really good trade. That is a great trade. Big boy trade to talk about. Veering back towards Will Levis, Bryce Young, if anybody's got Will Levis, Bryce Young trades. So you think Adams, Jacoby, Myers, Bowers, Tucker. I'm glad you said Trey Tucker. I'm really glad you said Trey Tucker, because I think he is that really, really deep sleeper. I've been talking about him for a few months now. Deep sleeper, Trey Tucker. And look, what do we do in this preseason? You monitor the noise, some of the reporting, and it's been very positive for Trey Tucker. Doesn't mean, and this is an important, of course, just because the smoke doesn't mean there's fire. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed, of course, that all of a sudden this player's going to have such an important role. But it absolutely speaks to a trajectory that could be there. And what are we're speculating? It's a dynasty. It's like a stock market. It's like trading. You want to play cycles, and you want to try to get in when something's so severely undervalued. In this case, we're talking about Trey Tucker as a deep sleeper at receiver. Similar look to already the quarterback conversation, talking about Drake May, making a little bit of comparison there. Now is the time. You got to operate with some urgency, I think. And I think Trey Tucker, especially if you can look, you get him in as a throw-in. You maybe work around a potentially a little bit bigger trade with whoever the Trey Tucker owner is, and you try to pounce in there. So, Will Levis, Bryce Young, talk about really, in terms of mystery box players that just have had really strong ends to the preseason. Bryce Young, of course, getting in really his only preseason action, only drive, was a 6 for 8, 70, and a touchdown. It got you effectively a almost 7-point fantasy point, depending on your format, 7, 8, 9-point fantasy drive, one drive. And so I don't think many people maybe expected that, given where, look, barely is a QB2, and there really hasn't been, I don't think there's not crazy movement. There's not crazy movement trajectory. Let me just actually go back in. Okay, keep your cut. Looks like they've chilled out a little bit. I don't know why I was having some little visual glitch there, but you look at the positional chart for Bryce Young. We were talking about a guy that was in that QB 19 even a week ago, and then all of a sudden he's down to QB 22. I think this is the time. This is the time to buy in on Bryce Young. It really is. Dave Canales, I am a huge believer, and there's already a little bit of an early return, and yes, it's the preseason. I understand that. But he's at least showing you something more than really anything we've seen last year. A trajectory, an ability with a new staff, just let's call it change in the envelope of change. He's able to, in limited action, limited work, he did what he needed to do. Similar to what Will Levis just did today. I really like the potential of these players, and yes, we're talking potential It's not proven yet. We haven't seen it yet. Didn't see it necessarily all last year with Will Levis, though we saw actually an incredible first game he started throwing bombs to DeAndre Hopkins. Interestingly enough, excuse me. Oh my God, I'm itching. I got like an itch in my nose, like I have an itch for talking about Dynasty, I guess. Will Levis in particular, we talked about before on this channel. Really, the prototype of this gunslinger, he's throwing it. The average depth of target, highest in the league. You go from Brian Callahan's system last year, you look at his track record, it's one of the lowest average depths of target that Bengals offense. And so just stylistically, you don't want to totally, of course, limit the gunslinger mentality, the big playability, of course, but sort of threading the needle a little bit, trying to maximize Will Levis, optimize really his play, this Titans offense. You add the weapons you do in a Pollard, and of course Calvin Ridley. I really, really like the trajectory and the time to invest on a Will Levis, on a Bryce Young in Dynasty Fantasy Football. I just do. I absolutely do. So, though it's a little bit convoluted, the quarterback discussion that we've had thus far, but I really want to key in on specific players, specific assets for your Dynasty team that if you don't have them, why not get them now? Why not get them now? Because once the season starts and they just start to show you in the real game situation, just flashes and signs. I'm not saying that they're going to be a shoo-in to be top 10 where an Anthony Richardson is ranked now. Obviously, that's really unique skill set, for sure. I'm not saying expect all the way up to QB1, a massive, massive jump, but at least in the sense of these mid-round type startup values, I see top 4, top 3 startup round values. It's just, they're really no brainers to me. The best, I think, investments that you can find in Dynasty right now. Some of these quarterbacks in this range, around QB, hovering QB 20 or so. So let's go over to receiver. I want to focus on a receiver. You've got here on Flock, big Marvin Harrison guys, big MHJ guys, which we haven't really seen any game action per se, but of course the clips, look, it's keeping the steam with Marv. Of course, he has incredible opportunity ahead of Amon-Ra. I don't like that. Jamar, still too rich for me. Puka at wide receiver 8. Wow. I don't understand what more you could have wanted from Puka. And yes, look, Cooper Kupp, now it's the cycle of, oh yeah, he's going to be healthier than ever. With Cooper Kupp, it's not like he didn't play at all last year. Puka Nacua, I think I really want to focus in on it. Look, he is going to be a year 2 player, so he does fit in this conversation of younger ascending players. I think Puka Nacua, a late second, not even a top 5, 6, 7 receiver. You can get him. I mean, if you can just add marginally to an Ayuk, to a Puka, I mean, come on, man. I love that. Speaking of Ayuk, let me know where you guys think he's going to go. I mean, it is just stalling out. I know Ricky, the People's Insider, long, he stood firm, and I totally respect that. And he's seemingly gotten the scoop ahead of a lot of national reporters, and it's just been a weird saga. I think he ends up somewhere. I know there's been speculation with the Ricky Pearsall injury, how exactly that may or may not be impacting his trade availability before they get a little bit more certainty on Pearsall and his potential just ability to potentially fill some of the Brandon Ayuk shoes, then driving home the idea that, they want to get a start now and impact potential receiver, a guy that can play at least. So We'll see. I don't know. That's your guess largely are as good as mine, I feel like, with Brandon Ayuk. We'll see. We will see. Malik Neighbors here. I mean, talk about a guy that keeps showing and showing and showing out. I think this is not at all a bad value. Wide receiver 10. I've been saying for months, look, the same tier as of a player for me as a Marv. Yes, he goes to the Giants. That's still, he's the guy, clearly, the guy. And could there be a Garrett Wilson type, let's call it, trap, where you're trapped there for in New York in the Big Apple? It just so happens across town, really in the same stadium though, where it's a little bit of growing pains there. People are still going to recognize the underlying talent in a dynasty sense. I mean, this is Malik Neighbors. I think if you can do an Ayuk, again, not to pick on Ayuk, but with this, like, for example, this current valuation, I mean, all over a swap there. Zay Flowers up to wide receiver 11. Wow. So talk about, I'm not trying to, I'm trying to think. We'll call it ASD. Man, you got to be loving it. Look, Zay Flowers, clearly you're the big winner of that trade. Zay Flowers, a wide receiver 1. Wow. I did not realize this big of a jump. Okay. Wow. Wow. I like Zay Flowers. Think, look, this is not maybe. I think this is roughly his ceiling. I think he's approaching right around that ceiling, bordering a top 10 receiver in Dynasty. I'm not sure about that. Jaden Reed, wide receiver 12. Okay. Wow. Again, something I did not expect here. Wow. Lock community. Interesting. Look, it makes for content. That's for sure. I respect everyone's opinions. You got Nico and Tank there, I think, back to back. I understand that. I know there's a lot of love for Nico, rightfully so. I think Tank, though, he's definitely figuring once again to be a significant piece. And if it's anything, alternating, I feel like for every 2 games of a Nico dominance as wide receiver 1, you could very well have, I think, the next 2 games where maybe it's Tank Dell leading the team in targets. Has 2 touchdowns compared to none for a Nico. I mean, it's similar degrees of upside, I guess, to be clear, that I see with both these players, and they're awesome players to have connected to CJ Stroud. I mean, it's unreal, obviously, what we saw with CJ Stroud, and if his ability the expectation for him to carry it well into year 2 and beyond. I mean, the guy, unbelievable player. You got DJ Moore here, wide receiver 15. Obviously, there's the contract bump there. Look, he's clearly a focal point of that Bears passing game. If anything, how far do we have to scroll down here? Where is Rome Odunze? Wide receiver 26. This guy. This might be the craziest thing I've ever seen. Okay. I know let's go back to talk about discrepancies here. Wide receiver 15 and on keep your cut. I'm, if anything, a little bit higher than wide receiver 15. I think Rome Odunze. Look, again, talking about the tiers of receivers, prospects. I know he's in Chicago. I know you've got a DJ Moore ahead of him. But Caleb Williams, look, that offense in general, I could see quite a year from Rome Odunze. Again, to use the comparison, maybe a Garrett Wilson-esque, even get to 1,000 yards as a rookie. You're talking wide receiver 10 or higher territory. So, I mean, Rome Odunze, you can buy him around roughly this price. I mean, come on, man. We'll skip it around there. I want to go back. I was shocked not seeing him in this top 15 conversation. Effectively, look, I do prefer him over DJ Moore in Dynasty. I do. I know there's the contract and everything, but Rome Odunze, a hell of a player. Hell of a player. Drake London here at wide receiver 16. I think this is a decent value. He's relatively gone down in price. Talking about a guy that was really the safe flowers. If anything, Brandon Ayuk, even Puka. Look at the graph for Drake London. I think this is a good price to get in on now. Maybe a little bit of a dip over the last couple months. I mean, wide receiver 1, the alpha receiver. I know there's Kyle Pitts, yes, and Bijan, of course, factoring in the pass game as well as weapons. But I'm liking what I'm seeing now, the value potentially here. I mean, you look at, he's wide receiver 11 on Keep Trade Cut. Actually, see the chart there. He's gone a little bit of a dip. He's actually rising right up. So maybe it's a flock fantasy. Maybe it's just a slight idiosyncrasy, but there's some insane values, I think. At face value, me reacting in real time here at receiver. Devontae Smith, wide receiver 17. I think this is just roughly where he should be. If you're not familiar with my view on him, as an Eagles fan, love him. The upside, as a fantasy contributor, I don't see really wide receiver 15 any given year. I'm really eclipsing that. Look, if there's injuries, barring injuries, of course that's subject to change, but I do prefer a Jalen Waddle over a Devontae Smith. I do. I look at Xavier Worthy up to wide receiver 19. Look, Hollywood Brown maybe up in the air, his availability immediate. So could Xavier Worthy have a really good week 1 or 2? And look, he's connected with Pat Mahomes in the preseason, that's for sure. A little bit aggressive. Let's cross compare where Xavier Worthy is all the way down at wide receiver 27. So a bit of a disparity. I think somewhere in between for me is where he belongs. He's in that fringe wide receiver 20 conversation. Wide receiver 19. A little bit rich for me. I mean, ahead of even a Hill and Olave for me, that's a little bit of a head scratcher. I know Chris Olave. Look, for the longest time, what has there been? The Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson into the NFL the first few years, neck and neck. And all of a sudden now we've really seen a gap, a gulf in Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson's dynasty value, which I understand. I've always been Garrett Wilson over him, but not needless to say, there's opportunity there. And in New Orleans, look, talk about the preseason. We're seeing some signs from Spencer Rattler. And look, Derek Carr, if he struggles, if they're middling in a division where I think they have every expectation to be the preeminent team, or at least competing for an NFC South title, that is, I could see Spencer Rattler a mid-season. He's in there, and maybe it boosts. It could very well boost Chris Olave, depending on the play that he provides. So I'll talk about a little bit of a reversion back to the quarterback conversation. Olave, I think Pittman, that's fine. Wide receiver 22 where he is. I think we've seen, let's cross compare it. Yeah, well, okay, wide receiver 22 in both places. So actually the same. I think that's fair. That's fine. Let's focus and hone in on Keep Trade Cut here. So at receiver, talk about all these. DK Metcalf. Look, it's looking like he's the OC, so he's clearly in charge of the unit. Has incredible responsibility there. Brian Grubb, that is. It's looking like it might be an explosive Seattle offense. So DK Metcalf, and then you even go a little bit down the board. JSN, wide receiver 29 here. I think he more so deserves to be in that wide receiver, closer to wide receiver 25. I know it wasn't really a great rookie year, but just talk about a Brian Grubb offense, the potential of a slot receiver as well in that offense. That could be, talk about true trajectories, maybe the steepest paths. DK, I think there's already maybe this, and he's 27 years old, are going to be in this season. Maybe there's a little bit less, what's the word? Helium, we'll call it, for him to really rocket up, jump dramatically. And given that he's just closer to, well, the top 10, just higher ranked to start with than a JSN. JSN, I mean, he could very well rocket up into the top 20, I could see. I could see it. You just have, I understand to a degree, you've got more attractive, or maybe a little bit more clearer paths for players ahead of him. In particular, well, he's the thumbnail of this stream. Brian Thomas Jr. Look, he's always been the guy outside of the top 3 receivers, the player that has true in terms of wide receiver 1 potential on a given team. He's always been number 4 there. And man, he is looking like he's going to be that receiver 1 in Jacksonville. And I think, look, I might have been underselling Jacksonville, the Jaguars, a little bit over the last couple months. I mean, it is preseason. Caveat, it's only preseason, right? But there's certainly been some signs of good, we'll call it. A lot of good. Maybe it's a bounce back for Trevor Lawrence, possibly. Brian Thomas, though, I think he has a lot of opportunity there in Jacksonville. Been on his train, cause we've been talking about Brian Thomas Jr. dating back to pre-combine. I mean, you got to prepare for the check out my TikTok, make some short form content over there. Brian Thomas Jr., you got to be loving if you've made that pick in your mid-first, late first even, of your rookie drafts. Really like the trajectory he's on. And honestly, I don't see him drastically going down anytime soon. So if you want to check in, maybe you can buy him for a reasonable and okay price, like a future first, plus maybe a secondary piece. Not a notable piece. I mean, that's interesting price. I would maybe check in just to get a pulse within your league. But T. Higgins, he's a guy I'm intrigued in your low-end wide receiver 2 conversation in Dynasty. I think he could very well talk about, look, the prototype, a role within an offense. He could be the alpha elsewhere a year from now. So I really like, have T. Higgins, hold on to him. Another guy maybe look into buying if there's just not a lot of enthusiasm. I think if anything, you hold on. I don't think it's likely. We'll talk about the Jamar Chase, the holdout threat. They say you let that build up. All of a sudden, maybe T. Higgins, in the first couple weeks, he vaults up. He has a couple good games, vaults up firmly into this top 20, closer to, we'll call it top 15, potentially even. Then that's maybe a good sell window. I would say that is a good sell window, but T. Higgins, I like it. I like it at wide receiver 23 at that point. Flowers, we're talking, wow. Wide receiver 24, cross compare it. Wide receiver 11, that is a gulf. That's low-end receiver 1 in Dynasty to low-end receiver 2. Wow. I got you, Dad Bod. Awesome. Rashee Rice. I guess just reiterate with Zay Flowers as we're wrapping up the discussion here. Quarterbacks and receivers. Running back, tight end. We'll have that very soon as well on another live stream coming up. As well as just talking about players I think I might have been way off on with how the winds are blowing currently, where it looks like it's trending. But sticking in with receiver, rounding out. Flowers, to me, he's in between 12 to 24. Not as high as that, but I'm not as low as this. Rashee Rice, look, evading a suspension in the NFL. He very well is primed to have, we'll see where he is. Let's see exactly. Okay, wide receiver 36. So that's a little bit low, I think. A little bit low for me. Wide receiver 36. I can understand wide receiver 25. I can understand it. I think, though, you've got Xavier Worthy, you've got Hollywood, you've got Kelsey. Rashee Rice, if you got him, if you had diamond hands, kudos to you. Hopefully you didn't just sell, you didn't panic sell. For me, it was a matter of he's a frozen asset as we were navigating the legal issues there, and maybe something comes of it still. I don't know. Not a lawyer, but George Pickens, wide receiver 26 versus, I believe he is wide receiver 23, so at low and wide receiver 2 on Flock. We'll end this low and wide receiver 2 conversation. He's not a guy that I'm really targeting. Not a priority for me to get Pickens as my wide receiver 2 type value on my team. If Ayuk goes anywhere, I'm thinking it's going to be Pittsburgh. I think that's what Ricky's been saying. That's what people largely have been connecting him to, in terms of the real insiders as well. But I think, if anything, it's Ayuk in Pittsburgh. I don't know about. I know the Jahan Dotson trade. And I know there's the 1 year of overlap there in Arizona State with Jaden Daniels. I don't really anticipate that. Already got Terry McLaurin there. George Pickens, he's just this feast or famine guy on a best ball league in a best ball format. Look, I like that potential 4 for 198 crazy 2-touchdown line that he had. Give you some spike weeks there, but in a lineup format, I don't see the consistent volume. Even with, let's say it's Russell Wilson, which I think it's not going to be for long, Russell Wilson, in terms of a starter there, how that's projecting. George Pickens, really flashy player, a good NFL player. Not a priority for me in my Dynasty team as to fill a wide receiver 2 type role. Just is not for me. Talked about Xavier Worthy, Debo, going to be 29. Let's see, he's been roughly stagnant this offseason. If Ayuk is traded, though, expect some big things. We could expect some big things for a Debo year. And again, some opportunity to maybe realize, I feel like, some momentum for Debo that hasn't really been there for a couple of years. Because obviously the emergence of an Ayuk, right? But Debo, as a middle wide receiver 3, I mean, I like this valuation. I think that's fine. I think that's reasonable in and around this top 30 conversation. Talked about JSN already. Jordan Addison. This is maybe a little bit rich for me still. I just don't like the underlying upside for a guy that's going to always be next to Justin Jefferson. TJ Hawkinson. So in the pecking order in the receiver hierarchy, I don't love it. Ladd McConkey, though, I do. I think potential easy, and I'm talking about screw potential. There's an easy route to the primary pass catching weapon for Justin Herbert. And again, I'm not familiar. I am at this point, I guess, a Justin Herbert truther, believer. I didn't really expect this to take really shape, but with how he's currently slid in dynasty rankings, this perception of, it's run. It's the NFL. You still have to pass the ball. And we've seen Justin Herbert in what was, frankly, I think, a worse situation, we can clearly say, going back to around his rookie year, early years in his career. I mean, he still showed top 4 elite caliber production. I don't think that all of a sudden changes. I want competent offenses. I want competent teams. And what does Harbaugh bring? I think he brings just that. And Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey, I could see a potential big year from him. Rounding out this wide receiver 3, rounding out the wide receiver 3 range, give or take here as we approach the hour mark. Adams, we know what we can expect. Same old, same old. This is where he's roughly been. Look at the picture of the graph. Yeah, talk about a guy that's it's a really flat line there, that blue preview. Jaden Reed. Oh my God. 33 versus, yeah, what did we see? 12? Like, that is just crazy. I have no idea what's going on for some of the really disparity seemingly in the voters on the two platforms. But Jaden Reed at 33, I'm cool investing at that price. Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, and then you've got, all right, Keon Coleman. Talk about similar situation, I think, with Ladd. A little bit of bare cupboard with the receiving weapons on an offense that has an incredible quarterback. I like Keon Coleman a lot. Been a Keon Coleman believer here for a long time. Check the log, check the videos. Wide receiver 36, you can't go wrong trying to get in early, trying to get in now. And then Terry McLaurin, last guy we'll talk about. With Jane Daniels, you could, and he's going to be 29. It's not like he's quite up there at 32 or 31 for a Kupp, Evans, Devontae Adams type. So, you talk about a guy that's got sneaky upside to a low-end wide receiver 1 potential, 10, wide receiver 10, 11, 12. I could see it, possibly. Jane Daniels, man. It's in the range of outcomes. It really is. And you talk about now less Jahan Dotson. He is the guy. There's going to be the target share. You know there's going to be it. So, Terry McLaurin, I think there's some sneaky value there. Guys, let me know where you're trying to find sneaky value, potential trades, moves in general, specific players we'll talk about in the comments. We'll talk about running backs and tight ends in the next stream. I'm going to be back with the South Carolina Dynasty tomorrow. As always, guys, thank you for the support. It means the world. Drop a like, subscribe if you enjoyed it. If you didn't, let me know in the comments why not. I will see you soon. Have a great rest of your weekend. And again, just want to point out, look, if you want to get on the Dynasty Psych Listener League, the Community League, drop it in the comments. I want, if you have the interest, demonstrate it. Looking to fill that out, round it out draft in the next coming days. So